As you know, most of the dinosaurs died out from the devastating impact of the meteorite on the Earth, and those who were lucky enough to survive died as a result of the subsequent Ice Age. However, let's go back millions of years. One of the main theories about the death of dinosaurs is connected with the famous Chicxulub crater. Scientists assume that this crater was formed after the collision of a giant asteroid, which destroyed about 90% of all types of dinosaurs. Then came the Ice Age as a result of this catastrophe. The question remains, what happened to the remaining 10% of surviving lizards? It should be noted that the mass extinction did not happen instantly, as it is often portrayed in some films and TV shows. The process of extinction of prehistoric animals began at the end of the Cretaceous period and continued for 5 million years. Comparing this period of time with the relatively recent existence of mankind, covering only 2.5 million years, it becomes clear why to this day there are many hypotheses about the reasons for the disappearance of dinosaurs. For a huge period of time, dinosaurs dominated the planet. They disappeared, giving way to new species, and on the contrary, new populations appeared. Even now, only tiny remnants of this diversity have reached us: crocodiles, turtles, snakes, and lizards. However, upon closer examination of species diversity, it becomes clear that scientists have not yet studied a fraction of the percentage of all reptiles that have existed for millions of years. For a long time, dinosaurs occupied an important position on the planet thanks to their impeccable physical characteristics. Despite the lack of significant brain abilities, they possessed strength and endurance. Unlike them, man was not endowed with natural armor, scales, strong bones, or formidable dimensions. The lack of a specialized stomach capable of digesting even spoiled meat, as well as limited physical capabilities. All this made man one of the most vulnerable predators. Because of this situation, the person began to look for ways to overcome difficulties. By using tools such as sticks with attached stones, wearing animal skins, and creating clay pods to store food, humans were able to adapt. He built shelters, fenced them off from wild animals, learned to create fire and pass on knowledge to his descendants, which allowed him to survive in difficult conditions. However, let's return to the source of death. Some paleontologists dare to suggest that the asteroid is not the root cause of the extinction. The evolution of dinosaurs, which unfolded over vast periods of time, led them to an intelligence similar to ours. They built cities, created modern civilizations, and even mastered nanotechnology, but as it turned out in the end, they destroyed themselves. However, this view faces strong skepticism from society. The second hypothesis states that the dinosaurs were destroyed by a cosmic catastrophe, the collision of a star located billions of light years from Earth. This explosion of gamma radiation damaged the ozone layer of our planet, changed the climate and the Earth's crust. As a result, dinosaurs began to mutate and disappear. Another hypothesis is related to the change in the level of the world's oceans. A sharp drop in the water level led to the mass extinction of animals around the world, breaking the chain of evolution. And of course, do not forget about volcanic activity. After the impact of the asteroid, hundreds of volcanoes woke up, spewing lava and causing earthquakes. Giant tsunamis hit the coastal lands, taking with them entire populations of animals. There is also an interesting option that dinosaurs were killed by new types of flowers and plants. Probably, herbivorous dinosaurs began to consume new plants containing poisonous alkaloids, which led to poisoning. At the same time, predators could die of hunger due to the disappearance of prey. Let's consider another theory. In the history of the Earth, pole inversions occur periodically, and this means that the planet temporarily loses its magnetic field. This period can last several thousand years, and many organisms die during this time. Perhaps this circumstance could affect only dinosaurs. This assumption, along with other hypotheses, remains in the air. The second scenario is related to the adaptation of dinosaurs as a result of the displacement of the continents. As you know, the Earth looked completely different at first. Africa and America formed a single whole. However, over time, tectonic changes began, and the dinosaurs that lived here for millions of years could not adapt to the new conditions, which ultimately led to their disappearance. There is also an idea that dinosaurs could die from various epidemics and infections, as their immunity could be weak or suppressed. The list of hypotheses can be continued, but let's leave it for another time. Now let's move on to the question of surviving prehistoric reptiles and their existence among us. The wonderful writer Arthur Conan Doyle, known for his works about Sherlock Holmes, also wrote the novel The Lost World. This book describes the adventures of the British expedition in South America, where living dinosaurs, prehistoric people, and animals were discovered. Similarly, Vladimir Robratilov's novel Plutonida tells about the adventures of travelers who ended up on the other side of the Earth, where, thanks to the greenhouse climate, the Jurassic period continued and dinosaurs still inhabited the world. These books, like many others, evoke the imagination of a person, and in them you can find the belief that prehistoric creatures could survive and exist to this day. With the coming of different years, and even centuries, there were rumors about sightings of various dinosaurs in different regions of the Earth. Let's try to figure it out, starting with a well-known story about a creature living in the Scottish Lake Loch Ness. The first cases of encounters with the so-called Loch Ness Monster date back to the times of the Roman Empire, when the Roman army conquered the Celtic lands. Since then, there have already been many stories, which over time turned into legends, and which inspired the inhabitants of those places with terrible horror. The image of this creature was described in various ways, as a giant frog, a long-necked seal, a snake with a huge neck, a horse, and other incredible fantastic forms. However, during the 20th century, the shape of the Loch Ness Monster gradually changed, and eyewitnesses said that this creature became more like a lizard, such as Talisandona or Ryltanus, sea lizards from the dinosaur era. In the last century, scientists began to take the idea of the existence of such a dinosaur more seriously. However, all the existing photos and videos were of low quality, and it was impossible to determine exactly what kind of animal this creature belonged to. But the number of eyewitnesses who saw with their own eyes and even heard the breathing of this creature increased significantly. All the evidence about the appearance of this reptile was diverse. Some saw a dinosaur, others a giant crocodile, and still others claimed that they saw something like a huge ring. However, in 1957, a resident of the area, who lived all her life near the lake, published a book called It's More Than a Legend, which collected about 20 stories of eyewitnesses who claimed to have met the mythical lizard of the Mission. In all these stories, the appearance of the animal was described almost identically: a thick, massive body, a long neck, and a small head. There is a hypothesis that there may be a fissure at the bottom of the lake, from which not only this reptile, but also a huge number of other prehistoric creatures could have appeared. However, so far this hypothesis has not been confirmed. Despite this, people continue to photograph and film the mystery of Loch Ness to this day. Recently, very recently, during a family vacation, a 12-year-old schoolgirl captured on the camera of her mobile phone something that could be interpreted as the Loch Ness Monster. This video spread on social networks. All this reminds us that, according to the legends of the local Indians, a huge monster named Agapova lives in the lake at our feet. In some way a local analog of the Loch Ness Monster. According to the descriptions, it has a log shape, reaching a length of 46 meters and sometimes up to 9 meters in width, and a thickness of 40 to 60 centimeters. Its head resembles either a horse's or a goat's head. Thus, there is a real prehistoric being. In archival records of meetings with Agapova, the case is mentioned since 1872, and there were more than 200 reports of sightings in total. One might think that this is only the result of the imagination of each witness, if it were not for one circumstance. A convoy of 30 cars, which were going on vacation, suddenly stopped while passing by the lake. All the passengers of the motorcade claimed that they saw the lake monster. It would be possible to consider all of this as the result of organized disinformation. However, the editor of the Vancouver Sun newspaper believed that too many respectable people had seen this panther to ignore the importance of real observations, and these observations continued throughout the 20th century. In addition, this panther was repeatedly captured on film, photographed and filmed. Regarding the hypotheses about the Loch Ness Monster, if many are inclined to consider it a long-lived plesiosaur, then in the case of Agapova there are as many opinions as there are ideas. For example, reporter Owen and Frank Liltwist believe that he is a plesiosaur. Cryptozoologist Roy Mickle believes that this is some kind of primitive dinosaur, like Cypthermatong or Basilosaurus, which had a snake-like body shape. Lake Nahol in Appa is also known for its own lake lizard, which was named Nyalita. In addition, in 1994, more than 20 people witnessed this phenomenon. Many eyewitnesses claimed that they clearly saw a water monster floating on the surface of the lake. On that day, there was no wind, which excludes the version about waves as a possible cause. Some witnesses boldly share information about the size of the monster. According to them, the length of Nuulit is 20 meters, and it is a reptile with a toothed crest. Due to its size, the animal moves clumsily and has a silvery gray color. Already at the end of the last century, the Argentine scientist Julio Abler tried to find the monster. In contrast to the first case, he managed to find traces of Nuulit's pus, the transverse length of which was 50 centimeters. The speleological method suggested that the weight of this monster could reach several tons. A policeman living in Appa's Nauelf became an eyewitness not only of the movement of the monster, but also of its sounds. By the way, the list of testimonies about meetings with lizards can be continued ad infinitum. These centuries-long meetings can cause years of thinking, conclusions, building theories, and even organizing expeditions to personally verify the existence of prehistoric creatures that have survived to the present day. Studies based on photographs, drawings, and video recordings show that some of these creatures have preserved their original nature and continue to live in their usual places in the modern world. Despite possible fakes, the corners of nature where no human foot has ever set foot are shrinking. However, this does not mean that dinosaurs or similar monsters do not exist. Perhaps, somewhere among us, a descendant of a Tyrannosaurus currently exists. A modern plesiosaur swims and reproduces, and in some corners of the deep Mariana Trench, a mosasaur or a megalodon may live that has adapted over millions of years, sometimes surfacing to play tricks on the nerves of casual sailors or vacationers. Among us, the direct descendants of dinosaurs, there are birds. Giant eagles and contours whose ancestors were Archaeopteryxes, as well as ostriches, are probably distant relatives of velociraptors. Even the common sparrow is a distant descendant of the same Campto's gnat. All these theories can be built endlessly. In the end, the real truth, millions of years long, awaits its discovery. We will be glad to hear your theories and comments on this video.